This is going to be your NFL 2022 Week 4 review and recap, part of a series of videos I do where I go through the NFL Week in review, go through all the games, the big takeaways, and all that kind of good stuff. So we'll get started with the first game of Week 4, Thursday night, Dolphins at Bengals. Obviously, there was one real big takeaway from this game, even more beyond sort of the final result, that actually played into the rest of the weekend, and that was Tua's injury. He had the injury the game before, was the apparent concussion, and then he had an actual real concussion Thursday, the Thursday game against the Bengals. And yeah, it happened towards the beginning of the game. He got stretched out on the cart, and yeah, kind of a scary sight. And sort of that was the whole tone of conversation throughout the whole NFL week. It's all about concussions, safety. Obviously, the Dolphins getting in trouble for that kind of stuff if they did not follow the proper protocol, which seems a little sketchy how it went. But yeah, we saw all throughout the NFL Week 4 that as soon as someone had an apparent maybe concussion, they was like, all right, you're out. You know, that kind of set the tone for the whole week in the NFL. So we'll see how long Tua is out for. I'm just going to be out. I'm going to give it at least 3 weeks. We'll see if he comes back after that. I didn't know that Teddy Bridgewater was their backup, and I actually think that's not that big a drop off between Tua and Bridgewater, even though I do obviously think Tua is better, especially at this point. But Bridgewater, I think he can hold down the fort if Tua's out for, say, about 3 weeks, something like that. But as for the game, wasn't sort of a tough game to predict. I picked the Bengals to win this game anyway, even without thinking about the whole Tua thing. Just the Dolphins coming off a really tough game against the Bills a few days before. And then they have to travel and play the Bengals. Yeah, Bengals got this one. And the Bengals are back on track like everyone really thought they would be after their own 2 start. Then we go over to the first game on Sunday, and the very first game, Vikings at Saints. I say that because this was the London game. I'm sure these London games are great to watch, but I've never really watched any of them from start to finish. I live in California, so these games would be super early for me, talking about doing in the UK time. But it ended up being a fun game for the most part when you have the Vikings winning this one against the Saints, 28-25, one on a final field goal at the end. So it's good that those good people across the Atlantic got treated to a quality game, and the NFL is doing more and more of these games over the pond, as there's going to be Packers Giants over there for this upcoming Week 5. Next up, for actually the first normal game in terms of playing here in the States, we got Seahawks versus Lions, 48-45. Seahawks won this one. Yeah, at a certain point, I stopped feeling bad for the Lions. They've had so many close losses, but it's like, you know what? At a certain point, it's like, wow. I mean, their defense has just been atrocious this year. But as for the Seahawks, man, I didn't think they'd be able to get 48 points this year. My goodness. But Geno Smith, he's been playing out of his mind this year. He's been playing very well, and the Seahawks are definitely better than I think most people would think. I mean, they're only 2-2, but that's not exactly what most people thought they'd be. Thought they'd be in record running for the worst record in the league, and it's still early, but they're definitely playing above people's expectations so far this season. Next game, we got Jets at Steelers. Jets won this one 24-20. I thought the Steelers would win this game, but lo and behold, it finally came to that point where Tomlin decided, you know what? I've had enough of Mitch Trubisky. It's time to sort of go in the new direction, sort of give some spice to the offense. And already we got the Kenny Pickett era starting, of him coming in after the second half. And you know what? Despite the 3 interceptions, and that's obviously not a pretty stat, played actually really well. Went for like 10 for 13, had 2 touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. And they actually were in position to win the game, but the Jets were able to really pull this game out at the end. But as for the Steelers, it's going to be a rough season for them. And it was going to be a rough season whether they had Trubisky or not, even though I thought they'd be a little better than what they showed for these first few games. But yeah, it looks like for Tomlin, I mean, I know everyone loves that streak he has of never having a losing season. That's really not going to do them any good this season. It's all about development for Kenny Pickett, see if he can play or not, go through the growing pains. So yeah, going to be a tough year for the Steelers. So yeah, but as for the Jets, they finally had Zach Wilson back, and yeah, they can have their season finally really get started to see how his development goes also. Next game, Bears at the Giants. Giants won this one 20-12. I predicted this game right. The Bears have one of the worst offenses in the league, and yet somehow they're still 2-2. If you look at Justin Fields' passing stats, they are atrocious. As for the Giants, hey, they're 3-1, been playing solid ball, even though no one obviously thinks they're a great team. But yeah, good for the Giants, and hey, you know, it's still good for the Bears. I don't think if they would have told them after 4 games they'd be 2-2, I think everyone would take that. Next game up, Titans at Colts. As I mentioned, all of these AFC South games, I have practically no interest in watching at all. These are just some ugly games. And as for the Colts, they've just gotten off to a terrible start. They lost this game 24-17 at home against the Titans. Yeah, I don't think the Titans are terrible, but the Colts certainly not playing. I can't. It's hard to believe that so many people picked them to win this division. That is not looking like a good pick at all. Next game we got Chargers at Texans. Texans, no, yeah, Chargers at the Texans. Chargers won this one 34-24. I actually picked this one wrong. I picked the Texans to win this one just because the Chargers have been so banged up. Just have a whole bunch of sort of bad mojo and momentum in this early part of the season. But they're really able to get a win that they really did need to really keep their season on track for the high expectations that they all had. They're able to win this one. As for the Texans, like I said, the Texans obviously are not great, but they've been in all of these games pretty much they've played. And I thought, there's a chance they'd win this one because of the state of the Chargers, but they did not win, obviously. Next up, we got Browns at the Falcons. Falcons won this 23-20. Picked this one right. Just because the Browns, once the Garrett news came out, and I'm glad that he's okay after the car crash, I just figure that they don't have quite the sort of the juice and the extra bodies that they would need to sort of get this victory. And the Falcons had been playing decent, so this was a solid pick by me, I guess. Next up, we have Commanders at the Cowboys. Cowboys won this one 25-10. Cooper Rush, 3 straight wins, 4-0 as a starter overall, including last year. Yeah, they've been able to definitely more than hold their own without Prescott back in the lineup. Now this was kind of a weird game to see visually, just because the Commanders were wearing these sort of out of nowhere sort of black unis, which actually didn't look bad. It's just kind of weird for a traditional Cowboys versus the formerly what team. But yeah, Cowboys have definitely done great stuff while Prescott's been out. They're saying he's eyeing a return for Week 5 against the Rams. We'll see if that ends up happening. But Cooper Rush, he's definitely adding to that quarterback controversy that Jerry Jones has sort of been hoping for. Next up, Jaguars at the Eagles, a matchup between two undefeated teams at this point, at the time they met for this game. Jaguars were actually up 14-0 in this game, but the Eagles were able to come back and really blanket them and won 29-21 at the final. Yeah, Eagles continue to impress and showing that they can come back from being down. Not a great game for Trevor Lawrence after he had some 3 really good games to start. Just had a bunch of turnovers in this game. But yeah, I think this game actually speaks great things about the Eagles and the Jaguars. I mean, they're obviously, I don't think, 3-0 was a very surprising start for them. But I still think they got solid stuff left in them for the season and should actually probably be the favorites in the division right now with how everyone's playing. Bills at Ravens, this was definitely a marquee game for a lot of people, given how you had the, 2 sort of star quarterbacks, MVP caliber players, candidates for this year, and Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson. Definitely not a fireworks show in terms of points. I mean, 23-20, it was a close game. It's another game, though, that the Ravens were up pretty big, and they ended up losing the game. Controversial decision by Harbaugh to sort of go for it on 4th down instead of kick the field goal and then using analytics. He's really costly. He's had a bunch of sort of like bad decisions when it comes to game management in the last few years. And it's just like, this was probably another one. I don't care how bad your defense is. You just take the points and just, give your team a chance. And, the 4th down and then you miss it and you're basically just shooting yourself in the foot right there. So that's how this game played out. Cardinals at Panthers. Cardinals won this one 26-16. Yeah, I think the Panthers had some solid momentum at the start of the season, but it's just gotten kind of ugly, and Baker Mayfield just has not played well at all. He's had one good stretch of football, the 4th quarter versus the Browns. Other than that, he's been pretty bad, but they say they're still sticking with him because Sam Darnold's still out with a high ankle sprain. As for the Cardinals, they're 2-2. I guess they're doing okay, but I don't think anyone's really taking them that seriously. This is more about how bad the Panthers are right now in terms of how they've kind of lost themselves, especially over the past couple of weeks, many due to their quarterback play. Broncos at Raiders. Raiders won this one 32-23, a game they desperately needed. I mean, you couldn't imagine the talk that would have gone on around them had they had gone 0-4, which they would have had they lost this game. So a game they definitely desperately needed. Actually, a decent game to watch, even though it definitely wasn't pretty all the way through. But like I said, Raiders needed this one. The Broncos 2-2. Everyone's super down on them. It's still early. I think they can get it together, but they definitely have a few eye-opening sort of flaws that I don't think a lot of people thought they would see at the beginning of the season. Patriots at the Packers. Packers won this one in overtime, 27-24, a game they should not be proud of by any means. I mean, obviously going into this game, Mac Jones was out with a high ankle sprain. Brian Hoyer goes out early with his concussion, another keeping to that concussion theme of people going out early, you know, after they get hit in the head. Well, and from then you had someone named, I can't even remember his first name. His last name is Zapp or something like that. And somehow they're able to take the Packers to overtime in Lambeau Field. Yeah, that's just an embarrassing result for the Packers. I understand they're going through their own growing pains on offense and with their sort of young receiving core. But my goodness, you know, this is a team that people actually think can win the NFC. And you think that they can barely scrap by the Buccaneers last week with all of their wide receivers gone. And then they just barely scrapped through the hapless Patriots on their third string backup. Yeah, Rodgers said it at the end of the game in the press conference that this way of winning is not sustainable, and that is more than true. The Sunday night game, definitely a marquee matchup. Buccaneers-Chiefs, Super Bowl rematch. Obviously, you got Brady and Mahomes. You know, it was actually surprising how this game played out just because the Buccaneers defense had really been carrying them through the first 3 weeks of the season. But they really got their asses handed to them in this game. I mean, before you looked that up, the Chiefs had like 28 points in the first half and able to get 41 overall. The Buccaneers actually played a decent game on offense, even though they, you know, there's a few garbage yards here and there because of the ending and how big the lead was at points. Yeah, it's just kind of weird. I think the Chiefs, it was surprising, but you know, the Chiefs got Mahomes and making the kind of plays he can do. Can't be all that surprising, I guess. As for the Buccaneers, like I said, it's kind of Jekyll and Hyde with how things had gone for them the first 3 games of the season. Although, you know, now that their receivers are coming back, you saw that they were able to be a lot better on offense in this game. Now they can blend the two in terms of their offensive skill positions, especially with their wide receiver core and Brady still playing well. And then you got the defense, what they did in the first 3 games. Yeah, this will definitely, I still think they're going to be a contender and in it to the end when it comes to the playoffs, you know, in terms of being a real contender for the Super Bowl. And then you got the Monday night game. Rams at 49ers. You know, I still hadn't really been sure what to make of the 49ers. It's been kind of, you see the talent, but it's like, but, you know, against the Rams, it's just been unbelievable how they've just been able to own them throughout the regular season to where everything that I think like, all right, the Rams, they got them this time. Nope, they got him again. This was a dominant effort, them winning 24-9. I got this result wrong. I thought the Rams would win this one. I think it actually said a lot about both teams, you know. I think the 49ers have shown that they can still capture or have that, you know, now that Jimmy G's really back in the saddle and getting those reps and all that kind of stuff, getting back in shape. I think they showed that, yeah, they'll be the same kind of contender they've been with him the past few seasons, or at least like 2 out of the past 3 seasons. And as for the Rams, I think they said a lot too. They definitely do not look like the same team that won the Super Bowl last year, and they have growing pains that I'm not sure are fixable with the current roster. Their wide receiving core, it's just Cooper Kupp or bust. Allen Robinson's just been, you talk about bust, an absolute bust for them. Not a lot of depth after that. You know, obviously OBJ, they don't have him anymore. They can't quite rush the passer as they used to. They're having trouble blocking Stafford after Andrew Whitworth's retirement. They just got a lot of issues right now, and Stafford dealing with his own problems. Who knows how that elbow is still affecting him? So they've got a lot of issues right now, and they just do not look like the same team. And you know, with these issues, they're not fixable with the current situation because they're roster issues and just don't quite have enough depth. So, you know, that's why when you look at the game they have coming up against the Cowboys, I think the Cowboys, even if Prescott doesn't play, I think the Cowboys should probably be favored in that game, even though it's in SoFi Stadium in LA. So, yep, there you go with all the games for week 4. Like I said, the theme of the week was concussions, because it feels like there was like 5 or 6 concussion-like incidents where maybe prior to the Tua injury, they would have been like, quick checkup, go back in. But now, because there's a raised eyebrow and all this stuff, everyone's like, nope, get your ass back in the locker room because you are not coming out until, until probably the next game. But we ain't taking no bad PR or nothing like that. So as we got week 5 coming up, like I said, the game I'm really looking forward to, Cowboys at Rams, the game I'm actually going to go to. This is going to be a fun time. My first time at SoFi Stadium. Can't wait to see that. Big Cowboy fan, probably, who knows, and get to see them at SoFi Stadium again. So that will be really fun to go see. But there's other good games for that week. Raiders at Chiefs for Monday night. That should be fun. And yeah, I think the games, we got another London game. So we'll see how the week for the NFL goes again. But yeah, as I mentioned, that is a go for my week 4 review and recap for the NFL. Made it to the end of this video. Thank you for watching.